Welcome back to 45th Perspective. Today we're diving into a recent Senate hearing that's been making headlines, stirring debate, and raising some tough questions about immigration enforcement, national security, and the broader direction of U.S. border policy. This hearing featured testimony from key officials defending current actions and strategies, especially as they relate to ICE operations, deportations, cooperation with foreign allies, and the administration's overall posture on securing the southern border. A lot was said, a lot was implied, and as usual, there's plenty of noise around it. My goal today is to cut through the noise and help you understand exactly what happened, why it matters, and how it affects everyday Americans. Before we get into the details, if you're watching this and you appreciate thoughtful, fact-driven commentary, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps boost our videos in the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can do so at patreon.com/45thperspective for as low as $5 a month. It keeps the lights on and allows us to keep producing content that's independent, analytical, and grounded in reality. Now, let's get into it.
Thank you, Tom. I wanted to ask you, do you have any sense of what the administration was presented with as far as options, updated options for potential land strikes in Venezuela when it comes to the war on the cartels?
Out of my way. I'm not in that one. I'm sorry.
And any update on the agents that are going to Charlotte as far as the increased immigration effort in Charlotte, North Carolina? Can you talk about that?
I'm not going to discuss any operation until it actually takes place. We'll see if that happens.
Tom, this week the Catholic bishops sent out a special message. They said they get the countries to secure their borders, but they don't like these mass deportations. What's your message?
So according to them, the message we should send to the whole world is that if you cross the border illegally, which is a crime, don't worry about it. If you get ordered removed by a federal judge after due process, don't worry about it, because there shouldn't be mass deportations. If that's the message we send to the whole world, people are still going to put themselves in harm's way to come to the greatest nation on earth. They're going to spend their life savings to give to a criminal cartel. And we saw during the Biden administration, when there was no immigration enforcement, over 4,000 aliens died next day during the historic war. 250,000 Americans died in fentanyl historic record. Secure borders saves lives. I wish the Catholic Church would understand that. We have the right to secure our borders like they have the right to secure their facility. You can't take their facilities out to the rest. As a matter of fact, the penalties entering their facilities are much worse than ours. So, we're going to force the law, and by doing that, we're saving a lot of lives. Secure borders saves lives. And one of the reasons no one talks about why we have the most secure border in the history of this nation is because exactly what ICE is doing. ICE is sending a message to the whole world. Don't leave your life savings to come to the country, because you're not going to be released. You're not going to cross the border illegally when you prosecute. So Catholic Church and all, I'm sorry. I'm a lifelong Catholic. I'm saying it as not only a border, I'll say it as a Catholic. I think they need to spend time fixing the Catholic Church, in my opinion.
On H-1B visas, with the president's recent comments, is any kind of a reversal? Do you think that H-1B visa policy is going to change based on hearing him say that?
That's still being discussed, so I'm not on that.
There are reports out of London that British intelligence is no longer sharing intelligence with the US following grave concerns about the legality of operations in the Caribbean. Can you confirm that, and what is your reaction to the idea that a key ally like the UK is so sceptical of the legality of your operations?
First of all, it's out of my mind, but I don't think UK is a friend of this country, a friend of the president. I don't think there's skepticism. And I'm not familiar with not sharing intelligence. Again, out of my lane. I'm a border guy, so that's a question for the Secretary or the Secretary of State.
Any more on the protest outside of the Broadview facility? Any more on the protest outside of the Broadview?
They've got the right to protest. Have at it. Don't cross the line. I was watching the video before I came out here. When they put hands on a law enforcement officer, they're getting arrested and going to jail. They have the right to protest, but don't cross the line. If people would just look at the data, the way it reads, that what ICE is doing, the vast majority of public safety judges, I know some of you here say that's not true, because they're not criminals, they're not convicted yet. If we arrest somebody in a county jail or state prison that has a criminal conviction, well, it's not, DUI. Like I read one report says, well, a lot of these are DUIs. That's really not a crime. really? 12,000 people a year die from DUIs. I consider that significant public safety threat. But then they say, well, some of these aren't convicted. Well, we arrest them in county jail. They're in jail, locked in a jail cell because they're arrested for a crime. We consider those convicted and those pending criminal charges criminal. But you got a lot of the media saying, well, most of the people in vice detention aren't a criminal. Wrong. I looked at the data this morning. More than half are criminals. And as far as what we're arresting, it published around 64 to 70% are criminals. And who the others, 30%, which the media ignores? A lot of them are national security threats. Most national security threats don't have a criminal history. We arrested several thousand Iraqi nationals. Most of them don't have a criminal history. Why is that? Because they're laying low to do whatever they want to do. A lot of them are gang members. A lot of gang members aren't criminal history. And like I said, a lot of them are fugitives. Those who had due process were ordered to move and went and went. Yeah, we were able to arrest them. But where did most non-fugitive, non-criminals, non-public safety threat, non-national security threats, where did most of them get arrested? Sanctuary cities. Because rather than giving us the bad guy in the safety and security of the jail, they release them in the community. We go in the community and find them. When we find them, many times are with others. Others in the United States illegally. Well, guess what? They're going to get arrested too. They're in the country illegally. It's not okay to be in the country illegally. It's not okay to enter the country illegally. It's a crime. And the message we're not going to send, come here illegally, just don't commit another crime and you're safe. It's not the message we're going to send. That's why we have the most secure border in lifetime in the history of this nation. Not only that, let's not forget, it's just not about immigration. It's just not about a secure community. The stronger the border is, the stronger our national security is. Now we have a pretty good handle on who's coming in, what's coming in, where it's coming in, why it's coming in. Which didn't happen in the 4 years of the Biden administration. 2.1 million gotaways, biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen.
So Nicholas Maduro in Venezuela said it. With the refugees have now, the president has announced that the shutdown is going to be result over on those 26
There's discussions going on.
with Congress.
Yes.
It's my understanding that's mandated. That's why I'm asking. I guess I'm curious whether there's flexibility in that number or is that
I talk to members of Congress every day. So there's discussions going on, but it's President's ultimate authority. And but I think this administration is working well with members of Congress on anything related to immigration.
Sir Nicholas Maduro out of Venezuela, do you think his days of power are numbered? The pressure's really ramping up.
I can't comment on that.
So as a member of the
Do you think
administration,
do you think the $50 million bounty on his head that before being offered by the U.S. for his arrest and or conviction is $50 million enough, or do you think that needs to go up?
I got on top of that. And look, Maduro's not a friend of this country. What they did in the last 4 years, they sent, Venezuelan gangs in this country. We saw what happened. We saw young women were raped and murdered by members of this gang. I appreciate President Trump took immediate action and called TDA a terrorist organization, MS-13 a terrorist organization, which is the right move to make. And I said, even before the administration came into power, designating these groups terrorist organizations is the right thing to do. Especially the drug cartels. They've killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world. It's about time we have a strong president like President Trump come in and hold these people accountable. Thank you.
During this Senate hearing, one of the biggest tensions that came forward was the clash between humanitarian concerns, national security priorities, and the political messaging surrounding each. At the center of the discussion was the issue of mass deportations, the increasing pressure to secure the border more aggressively, and the role that federal agencies like ICE are playing in shaping outcomes on the ground. One senator pressed the witness on whether the administration was considering expanded land strike options in Venezuela as part of countercartel operations. The official would not confirm or deny any operational planning, which is typical in hearings like this. That kind of military or tactical information is almost never discussed openly. But the question itself tells us something. Members of Congress are aware of and concerned about the growing influence of transnational criminal organizations, and some of them are pressing for drastic measures to counter those networks. The official also fielded questions about ICE agents being sent to Charlotte, North Carolina, to assist with increased immigration processing. Again, no specifics were provided, but the question signals the growing strain on local resources as migrant inflows continue to shift and expand beyond traditional border states. This is something communities across the country are feeling. Small cities, suburban counties, even rural areas, all dealing with an immigration system that's overwhelmed, inconsistent, and full of policy whiplash depending on who is in office. But the conversation became especially heated around comments recently made by Catholic bishops who criticized the idea of mass deportations and expressed concern for the human dignity and safety of migrants. The official, who openly stated that he is a lifelong Catholic, strongly disagreed. He argued that while compassion is important, the Church's stance, at least in his view, sends the wrong message globally. He believes that when Church leaders publicly oppose deportations, it signals to people across the world that crossing illegally is worth the risk because the U.S. will not seriously enforce its own laws. He tied this to the tragic deaths of migrants who attempt the journey through dangerous terrain and to the thousands of Americans who've died from drug overdoses connected to cartel activity. This was one of the most emotional parts of the hearing. And whether you agree with him or not, he's tapping into something real: the tension between moral compassion and the rule of law. On one hand, you have faith leaders saying that mass deportations can be cruel and disruptive to families. On the other hand, you have law enforcement stressing that without consequences, the system collapses and more people end up harmed. It's a tough balance. The official's point was that enforcing immigration laws is not inherently immoral. In fact, he believes that strong enforcement saves lives by discouraging dangerous crossings. It's worth stepping back and acknowledging something important here. These hearings often turn into philosophical battles dressed up as policy questions. You have one side emphasizing compassion and humanitarian protections, and the other emphasizing order, security, and long-term deterrence. The truth is that both perspectives contain valid moral and practical concerns. And the challenge for policymakers is finding a workable middle ground. The hearing highlighted how far we still are from achieving that. Another major moment came when a senator referenced reports from London suggesting that British intelligence officials were hesitant to share information with the U.S. due to concerns over the legality of certain operations in the Caribbean. This could have been a bombshell if confirmed, but the official flatly denied having any knowledge of such a situation and emphasized that the UK remains one of America's closest and most reliable allies. This exchange reflects something deeper: the growing pressure on international partnerships as the U.S. adopts more aggressive countercartel strategies. Allies are watching carefully, and our relationships, whether diplomatic, intelligence-based, or strategic, can be affected by even the perception of overreach. The hearing also touched on domestic protests outside ICE facilities, particularly a recent incident at a location where demonstrators allegedly put hands on law enforcement. The official reiterated that peaceful protest is a constitutional right, but physical interference with officers will result in arrests. This aligns with past federal responses, but politically it feeds into the broader national debate about civil disobedience, police authority, and the line between protest and disruption. Again, it reflects a larger trend. Immigration enforcement isn't just a border issue anymore. It's something everyday citizens feel strongly about, enough to take to the streets. And the reason for that passion is clear. Immigration touches everything: our economy, our communities, our schools, our trust in government systems. It also shapes the national identity debate that has been simmering for decades. In this hearing, the official pushed back hard against what he characterized as media narratives claiming that ICE primarily detains non-criminal immigrants. He presented internal data showing that over half of those in ICE custody have criminal convictions, and many of the remaining individuals pose national security risks or have pending charges. He challenged the idea that someone awaiting trial or arrested for serious offenses should be treated as though they pose no threat simply because they haven't been convicted yet. In his view, the combination of criminal offenders, fugitives who have ignored court orders, and individuals flagged as potential security threats justifies the current level of enforcement. This is another area where political narratives often overshadow nuance. One side says ICE is targeting harmless people who simply overstayed a visa or crossed to escape poverty. The other side says ICE is arresting criminals and dangerous individuals who should have been deported long ago. The truth is that both things are happening, but hearings like this show how deeply divided the country is over which group is the priority and what enforcement should look like. The issue of sanctuary cities also sparked heated discussion. According to the witness, sanctuary jurisdictions that refuse to cooperate with ICE make communities less safe by releasing individuals who should be held for federal removal. Because sheriffs in those areas refuse to transfer custody directly, ICE agents are forced to make at-large arrests in residential neighborhoods, apartment complexes, or public spaces, operations that are more dangerous for the agents, the targets, and surrounding civilians. This is a point ICE has been making for years, but it carries political implications that cities fiercely reject. Local leaders argue that cooperating with ICE hurts community trust and makes immigrants fear calling the police. Federal authorities argue that refusing cooperation creates revolving door scenarios where individuals reoffend and disappear into the community. This is a debate that cuts right to the heart of federalism. How much authority should the federal government have over local jurisdictions, and where is the line between local autonomy and national security? The hearing didn't settle that question, but it put a spotlight on how unresolved and contentious it continues to be. From there, the conversation shifted to an even broader issue, the claim that America now has the most secure border in its history. The official said this is due to strong enforcement, clear messaging abroad, and a refusal to allow illegal entry to go unchecked. He noted that during the previous administration's 4 years, 2.1 million individuals crossed the border and evaded detection entirely. This number, commonly referred to as gotaways, represents one of the administration's strongest criticisms of its predecessor. From the official's perspective, the current approach has reversed that trend, creating a more controlled, predictable, and secure border environment. It's important here to step back and ask a key question. What does a secure border really mean? Is it the number of illegal crossings? The number of deportations? The amount of fentanyl seized? The level of international cooperation? Or the stability of the political messaging coming from Washington? The answer depends on who you ask, and this hearing showed exactly why the debate continues. Each side has its own metrics, its own priorities, and its own interpretation of what success looks like. The hearing also briefly touched on refugee caps and whether the administration has any flexibility in adjusting those numbers. The official explained that the president ultimately has the authority to raise or lower refugee admissions, though he didn't offer specifics about upcoming changes. This is another area where political pressure is intense. Some lawmakers want to expand refugee acceptance for humanitarian reasons. Others want to limit it due to national security concerns or domestic economic pressures. The tension between compassion and caution is ongoing, and it's not likely to be resolved soon. Near the end of the hearing, a senator asked whether Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro's time in power is running out. The witness declined to speculate, which is understandable. But the senator followed up by pointing to the $15 million reward the U.S. has offered for Maduro's capture or prosecution, and whether that number should be increased. The witness didn't comment on that either. These questions show just how intertwined foreign policy and immigration enforcement have become. Venezuela's political situation is directly tied to migration patterns in the hemisphere, and U.S. strategy toward the Maduro regime shapes both diplomatic relations and border dynamics. Toward the close of the hearing, the witness praised the designation of MS-13 and certain cartels as terrorist organizations, arguing that these groups have killed more Americans than many globally recognized terror networks. While this statement can be debated depending on definitions and data sources, it reflects a broader trend in American politics. The push to treat transnational criminal groups more like formal terrorist entities, with all the legal powers and operational authorities that come with that designation. What stands out throughout this hearing is not just what was said, but how it was said. There was urgency, frustration, and, in some moments, a sense of deep moral conviction on all sides. Immigration is not simply a policy issue, it's an emotional one. It cuts across political lines, religious values, national identity, public safety, and humanitarian ethics. And that's why hearings like this feel so charged. They are not just debates over legislation or budgets. They are debates over the kind of country America wants to be. For the average American, what does all of this mean? It means that the struggle to balance security and compassion is far from over. It means that immigration policy will continue to affect your community, whether you live near the border or thousands of miles away. It means the pressure on local resources will persist. It means the political fight over sanctuary cities, deportations, and asylum rules will continue to shape elections at every level. It means that our alliances abroad can be tested by our domestic decisions. And it means that the conversation around border security, what it is, how it should work, and who it protects remains one of the central challenges of our era. My personal take, looking at both sides, is this. We absolutely need compassion. Migrants are human beings, often fleeing circumstances that most of us can't imagine. But compassion without structure becomes chaos. And chaos, in the end, harms the very people we claim to protect. On the other hand, strict enforcement without humanity risks turning the immigration system into something cold, mechanical, and disconnected from American values. The solution is not one extreme or the other. It's a thoughtful, well-organized system that upholds the law while respecting human dignity. A system that rewards legal pathways, discourages dangerous migration routes, and holds both government and foreign actors accountable. That balance is hard, but it's necessary. As always, these hearings remind us that democracy is messy. But it's in that messiness, those arguments, those disagreements, those passionate exchanges, that progress happens. Or at least that's the hope. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to subscribe to 45th Perspective and hit the like button. It really supports the channel. And if you want to join our Patreon community and help us keep producing independent, fact-driven commentary, visit patreon.com/45th Perspective. Even $5 a month makes a real difference. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the issues raised in this hearing? How do you think the country should balance compassion and enforcement? Where do you stand on sanctuary cities, deportations, and the role of ICE? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going.